Just recently, Adobe announced an online version of Photoshop. This is a massive, major milestone for web technologies because it clearly demonstrates that it's possible to port an app the size of Photoshop to the web. In this video, I want to dig a little bit behind the scenes of online Photoshop to see exactly how it was created and what technologies make all of this possible. Of course, we will focus a little bit more on the CSS side of things, but we will touch other areas as well. Alright, I have a demo on photoshop.adobe.com open and we're going to explore Photoshop from right here. But before we go into it, I want to mention two fantastic articles that you should read probably even before watching this video. First one is an article by Adi Osmani. I will open it quickly. Photoshop is now on the web, and this is a nice write-up where Adi explores which technologies were used and how much effort did it actually take to bring this project to web. It's a massive undertaking, a massive project, and a major milestone for the web. Adi goes deep into technologies that were used, performance challenges, and so on. It's a very fascinating read. And the second article that I want to mention is an article by Ahmad Shadid. I will open it. Ahmad shares interesting things he found that are related to CSS. Of course, I will be focusing in this video on CSS side of things as well, but I will share my own take, and Ahmad found some really interesting things that I will not be sharing here, so I definitely recommend you check his article as well. With that out of the way, let's jump back into online Photoshop and let's open Developer Tools. And if you try right-clicking anywhere in the interface, you're going to see that it's not working. And even if you try Command-Shift-I, which is shortcut to open Developer Tools, you're going to see that Photoshop maps this into Image Resize tool within its own interface. So one of the easiest way to open Developer Tools, if you don't want to dig into browser menu, is to use Command-Shift-C, which opens Developer Tools in Inspect mode and allows you to directly select an element to inspect on the page. If you want to learn more about Developer Tools and handy shortcuts you should be using, I have another video, link should be on the screen right now, so check that out. And let's dig into online Photoshop. I will close this window for now, and I will close this tutorial as well. Let's select HTML tag, and the first thing that I want to mention here and that really stands out is this universal selector star with the touch action set to manipulation. The touch action CSS property allows you to set how an element can be manipulated by touchscreen users. Manipulation value that we have here enables panning and pinch zoom gestures, but disables additional non-standard gestures like double tapping to zoom and so on. So online version of Photoshop not only works on desktop, but it will probably work, if not already, on tablet and mobile devices as well. Before we dig deeper, I want to show you a console really quickly. And this first message right here, when you have an old logo of Photoshop, and alongside logo, we have three different labels. And if you're wondering how can this be created, I have another video on styling Developer Tools console.log messages. And it's really easy to do that using the format specifiers. If you want to dig deeper, if you want to learn how to actually create labels like that, I explain exactly that in my video. Link should be on the screen, so check it out. In any case, let's jump back to our Elements panel and let's dig a little bit deeper. We have here a body tag, and first property on the body tag is color scheme set to dark. As you see in our preview, we are using Photoshop in a dark mode, and this can be changed in Photoshop interface. Let's try it out. I will open the menu here and go into settings. Right now we have a dark version, so let's set it to light. And once we do, you're going to see that the color scheme changes to light. The color scheme property defines how the file browser elements, the file browser UI elements like select boxes and more are rendered. They can be rendered in light mode or in dark mode. If you want to learn more about that, I have another video on how this particular property works. So check it out. Link will be on the screen and in the description. Also related to the color scheme, we have on the body tag, this variable PSV is light, is dark. And as you see, when light is enabled, we have variable set to initial and dark set to empty value. I find this pattern to be interesting and unusual. Here is attribute selector that targets a body element with the style and the color scheme set to light or dark. If we switch to dark mode, I'm not exactly sure how they're using this in code elsewhere. If you know a little bit more about this pattern, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to learn more about this pattern when it's setting light variable to empty value and dark variable to initial. If we dig a little bit deeper and select our first element, PSV System Theme, you're going to find that this is actually a web component. This entire project is created with web components, or specifically with Spectrum Framework for Web Components by Adobe. I'll open it quickly here. Spectrum Web Components is a project by Adobe that implements Adobe's design system by using web components. That way, they can encapsulate styles and other resources by a certain component without spilling into other parts of web application. This is a really powerful, a really interesting concept, and a fantastic example of how web components can be utilized in large-scale, massive applications like online Photoshop. This framework features a number of components. You can see them here in documentation, and a basic component would look something like that. You define a custom element in HTML, and everything that is related to that element will be encapsulated within that particular element, or styles created for that element will not spill out to other elements on the page, which makes it a lot simpler to create an application of this magnitude without thinking too much about, will I accidentally change something or some other part of Photoshop if I tweak this particular CSS class, or if I create this particular CSS class. So web components is what makes this online Photoshop possible. Dig a little bit into it to see how it works and how it can be useful maybe for you, for your own projects. Let's return back to Photoshop. If we scroll a little bit down in the styles panel, you're gonna find host pseudo-class. This pseudo-class allows you to select this shadow DOM element that is created for that particular component. There's a number of custom properties created for the host element, not just here, but if we scroll down, you're gonna see there's a bunch here as well, and even more, we're gonna come to an end, and you're gonna see there's 403 more properties created. Insane number, but for an app of this magnitude, this probably is necessary and makes a lot of sense. And while we're talking about custom properties, I want to mention a fantastic video on the subject by Kevin Powell. I think the video is titled "Using Custom Properties Like This is a Waste." And in this video, Kevin shows you how to create pseudo-private custom properties and why you should be using those. I strongly suggest you check that video. It's a fantastic one that will allow you to get more out of your CSS custom properties. And by the looks of it, Adobe is using some kind of a technique like that, because if you explore this, you're going to see that a lot of those custom properties are referencing different custom properties. If you click them, you're going to see exactly how deep this goes until you finally figure out that here is where actually is Spectrum Blue 900 RGB custom property set. Let's focus a little bit more on the layout side of things and see how Photoshop is created in terms of layout. Are you using CSS Grid, Flexbox, or what is behind a layout of online Photoshop? If you dig into CSS, you're going to see that most of the components here on the page in Photoshop are actually created using Flexbox. And I find this very, very interesting, because I think that a lot of developers, if they're thinking about app like Photoshop, would immediately resort to technologies like CSS Grid, which allows you to create a little bit more complex user interfaces, a little bit more complex layouts. And there might not be need for that always. As you see, there's just a number of elements stacked on top of each other, so they can be just arranged using display block property, for example. And then if there's a number of icons like we have here, those are laid out using Flexbox. And I believe that this is a really nice example of how you shouldn't be overthinking things. The simplest solution is often the best one, and this, of course, applies to CSS as well. So if you don't have to use CSS Grid, well, don't use it. Use display block. If you can get away with Flexbox, and use Flexbox. And if you're dealing with a layout that is a little bit more complex, for example, like we have in Photoshop image size model object, there are some components here that are very suitable for CSS Grid, and of course, Photoshop is using grid in this particular areas. Let's inspect it. There we go. This is set out using CSS Grid. So most of the layout for online Photoshop is created using Flexbox, but there are some components that are utilizing CSS Grid as well. And if you're wondering what is the main driving engine behind online Photoshop, and I don't think this should be a surprise to anyone, it's Canvas. CSS doesn't have capabilities of manipulating images in a way that Photoshop requires, so that part of Photoshop is created using Canvas. I believe that this is enough for this particular overview. Of course, explore online Photoshop yourself. We have amazing developer tools, so you can just open them and dig into it, see exactly what you find. And of course, check the articles I mentioned at the beginning by Ahmad Shadid and Adi Osmani. Fantastic reads that you should definitely check out if you still haven't. In any case, I hope this video sparks your imagination, shows you what's possible using modern CSS, and as mentioned at the beginning of the video, online Photoshop is a monumental step in the evolution of web apps, because if an application like Photoshop can be ported to web successfully, that means that there are no limits to web development, and there's amazing things you can create with CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. So go ahead and build something amazing. Thank you so much for your attention. My name is Zoran Jambor. I will see and hear you in the next version of online Photoshop, or rather, in the next video.